you were the largest donor, the biggest supporter of Charlie Kirk, of Turning Point, and then you stopped. Why did you stop?
Okay, just a little history. I think I met Charlie. It was probably at a David Horowitz Freedom Center conference called Restoration Weekend. And David was very, very open, always generous with introducing new talent to his audience. And I was very impressed with Charlie. And I became a donor, probably not his first donor. I forget the name of the fellow. He's no longer with us. But I became the second donor and helped the organization grow and gave him advice whenever he asked for it. So I was a member of Turning Point's the team for probably 10 years, maybe 12 years. And I supported various projects within Turning Point. I also helped Turning Point Action, which is a 501c4, gave them some significant funds to help them, to help President Trump get elected. But about, maybe it was, I don't know.
Well, let me ask you, since you're talking about support, you gave support in the millions of dollars. About $5 million, would you say?
It's between 3 and 5. I honestly, I'd have
over
to check.
Over a period.
Over a 10-year, 12-year period. Yeah. And, but I became very concerned. This was about 2 months before his untimely death. I became very concerned with his giving a lot of credence to people like Tucker Carlson. And when there were big organizational meetings like Turning Point Action, Turning Point America or AmeriFest, right up on the big brochures next to Charlie was Tucker Carlson. And of course, I've been following Tucker Carlson. I used to like watching him when he was on Fox News. I liked his attitude. He's a little sarcastic. But then, for some reason, something changed, and he became, in my view, a Jew hater. I don't use the term anti-Semitic. And Tucker has his own show and where he platformed known Jew haters. So I talked to Charlie about this, and I was very concerned that he was being influenced and giving a platform. Tucker Carlson, I think, gave a keynote address at one of the major Turning Point events, and I didn't get a good answer, and I told Charlie that I can't finance you anymore. I feel very good about my past helping Turning Point and helping you. You've used the money appropriately. You really helped President Trump get elected, the ground game that he did in those borderline states. But going forward, I don't see, I don't like the trend of the organization going forward. So I'm going to stop financing it. Now, by the way, he didn't need it anymore. I think he was at the run rate of $60 to $80 million a year they were raising. And it's not like I stabbed him in the back. We had the discussion. And it's very common for philanthropists to give to causes they believe in. And I did give to causes I believed in, but then the organization changed.
What do you think was going on with Charlie? Charlie seemed to be pro-Israel. He made trips to Israel. I've seen him pose with the Israeli flag. He's been at the wall. He seemed to be a supporter, a sympathizer with Israel. Was it the case that, in your view, Charlie was moving in the other direction? Or was he just saying, hey, listen, Tucker's a great buddy of mine, and he has his own views, I have my own views, but on that basis of friendship, I want to give him a platform? What was going on in Charlie's mind? Because I think this is something people are grappling with, and you got to see it up close.
Right. And when he began to become a strong supporter of Israel, and by the way, that was partly motivated by a donor, Bernie Marcus, who was founder of Home Depot,
right?
Who, as I recall, Charlie told me, gave him a $10 million grant to start a group, a pro-Israel group within Turning Point. And when I saw that happening, I spoke to Charlie at an event that I was attending with him, and I said, "This is a mistake, Charlie. Even though I'm very pro-Israel, of course, I'm known to be a Zionist, I told him it was a mistake for him to take positions outside of the main core of what Turning Point is all about. Turning Point is about free enterprise, capitalism, the literal interpretation of the Constitution, and freedom of speech. And I said, as soon as you start being involved in other peripheral causes, although they may be good, in my view, it's a good one, you shouldn't do it. You shouldn't do it. So even
Okay. Like, I agree with him. I've said this. I think Turning Point should focus on things that are here in stateside. I don't think Israel is our biggest concern by a mile. It's not our biggest concern. Not the U.S. It's not our biggest concern at all. We do need to be concerned about it, but it's not the biggest concern. It may be in the top 20, but again, it is not the biggest issue. So no, I agree with Dr. Bob. Shout out to Dr. Bob.
Even though he was doing something that I would normally approve of outside of Turning Point, I suggested he not do it. In the same way, when he became somewhat, not he, but he was promoting people who are anti-Israel or anti-Zionist or Jew haters, I told him you shouldn't do it.
It seems like what you were saying to Charlie, in effect, was
stick to your knitting.
And stick to America first. You don't go outside of the American agenda.
Because as soon as you start, and I think what happened, he went to college campuses, and this was after October 7th, 2023, and there were a lot of questions by the...
Okay, this is a good question. I don't know, and I need to do some research. Was Charlie Kirk getting a lot of questions about Israel before October 7th? Like, was he getting a lot of questions? I don't know. So I'm putting it out there. If somebody runs across it, JWhit at JWhit.com. I'd like to know, like, what was his questions? What were the questions like in, 2020 or earlier before October 7th? Like, what were they before? Okay. And hear me. We can disagree. I disagree with that simply because, but we don't have to disagree. We don't have to like part ways. However, to the degree that we are talking about it today, I don't think Israel is that important. I will stand on that one. I don't think Israel is as important to what we're dealing with right here in the United States right now today. Your gas prices, your child's education, taking care of your 401k. It's not that important. It's not. There's more things important. That's just it. There are way more things that are far more important to us right now. Again, I'm not saying it's not at all important. I'm just saying it's not as important. That's what I'm saying. And I think most people, if they're being fair and honest, and I am a Christian, and I am a Christian, I disagree with the idea that your eschatology, we can have that debate, later on, of course. We can have that call out. But no, I don't think that it's as important as we like to make it out to be. Yeah, that's it. Shout out. Grace and peace, everybody.
The students, which I don't know if they were prepared ahead of time, but they were poking him about Israel. Why are you so, interested in Israel? It's not American. It's not pro-American. So I think that helped change his mind or his direction. And he never said anything, that would indicate that he was a Jew hater or an anti-Semite. But certainly by keeping Candace Owens on their website, and you can still, I don't know if you can still find her there, but she was there, probably not, given the relationship with now. But she was there when I was involved, and I said, I don't like, I thought she was out. She was still there. You'd have to find it. But certainly Tucker Carlson was being promoted, and I think that's what happened. It was in reaction to all the questions he was getting by the students on college campuses.
Okay, so and we can dig into it. So Dr. Bob, shout out to Dr. Bob. He has a great haircut, by the way. Shout out to everybody who's bald. Dr. Bob says, hey, he's asking these questions because of what happened on October 7th. And because of that, that's where all of and I can totally get with that. I do want to know, like, I'm gonna have to do a little deep dive and find me a Charlie Kirk before October 7th. What kind of questions was he getting? Because to me, that is important, because it does kind of go to show what I think is the problem, is that we kind of hyper fixated on this topic. And I don't think that people are giving it the proper attention and putting it in its proper place. Shout out.
So I think what you're saying here, and to me, this is not an unfamiliar story. When I was at the American Enterprise Institute, we had free market economists, and we would get sometimes funding from some big business which supported free market capitalism, but on the other hand, when it came, for example, to a subsidy to that business, they would want the subsidy. And then the free market economists would revolt and say, you know, we're being bought off. And so the head of AEI, of the American Enterprise Institute, was caught between the scholars over here and the donors over. So to me, this is like, this happens.
This happens.
Right? And I think what you're describing is, here's Charlie, and he wanted, did he take the money from Bernie Marcus? Did he take the 10 million?
Yes.
He did. Okay,
yes.
so he's committed over here,
right.
And at the same time, the students are kind of over here. So when Charlie said, he said, I'm being pressured by the donors, but really what?
No, I wasn't pressured by it. I never tried to pressure him. I just said this is not consistent with the mission of Turning Point. That's what I said.
What's wrong with that?
You should stick to the mission of Turning Point, and although you may get less tweets or less people attending your conference, this is what you should be doing.
Because this is what you set out to do.
That's what he set out to do, and that's what I funded.
And obviously, I think part of what you're saying as well is that a donor has every right to give money to a cause that you believe in. And if the organization or the individual marches off in a different direction,
stop giving the money.
Why on earth would you want to? Right. There's no like entitlement to the money.
Right.
So why would you, again, if you earlier today I did a video with a content creator who creates manga comic books, or manga, they're not actually comic books, they're called manga, which are basically Japanese comic books, okay? But if I don't like Japanese comic books, why would I give him money if I don't support what he's doing? It's really that simple. I mean, this is a supply and demand. This is look, Charlie Kirk was providing a product. He was providing a service to people. And if they didn't like the service, they just chose not to support it. I don't see why that's a lap too far mentally for people to understand. But let's keep going. Let's go.
And there's no intentional. I didn't try to get the money back that I had already given.
Talk about they were going to name a building after you.
Yes, there was
the Shulman Center,
the Shulman Freedom Center.
And what did you tell them?
I told them, and I had made most of the payments that I promised to do was in stages based on where the building was and the purchase of the building and everything. And I said, I'm not going to make the last payment, but you can name the building. The agreement was supposed to be named after the Shulman Foundation. I said, you can name the building anything you want except Shulman.
Don't use your name.
Don't use my name. Don't use my name. Right.
And what was Charlie's reaction when you told him that?
They said they'd have to think about it, and they never got back to me, and they never distanced themselves from Tucker in any way. And
no.
I think he was influenced by the number of followers that he gets with Tucker there. Tucker's an influencer who has a large audience, unfortunately.
It is something that people have grappled with, right? What caused Tucker to change?
Money.
And you're saying it's money. The reason I've been myself flabbergasted by it is people do change their mind, right? Whittaker Chambers used to be a communist, and then he became an anti-communist. But he
wait, hold on. How you gonna call me out, Dinesh? Hold on, man. Hold on, Dinesh. Whittaker Chambers. Who is this? Who's Whittaker Chambers? Let's not call me out like that, brother. What's going on here?
Whittaker Chambers used to be a communist, and then he became an anti-communist. But he wrote a 600-page book, Witness, explaining how he shifted, what caused him to change his mind. Notice that Tucker has never done this.
No.
He's never given any kind of account, and yet suddenly you have this sort of new Tucker, and he is saying the things that younger Tucker is the opposite of what he said. Right. But you think it's financial.
That's my belief. Yep. And Qatar, the country of Qatar has a history of making huge donations to various universities to fund Middle Eastern schools, and most of those organizations have become centers of radicals and these universities. To the deterrent, to the negative effect of our society. Most of the university campuses that were inflamed by October 7th by Israel a day after the war. Israel didn't do anything for months after they were attacked, but the next day there were all these campus protests, and those come from the organizations within the universities that are financed by Qatar. And that's well documented, how many billions of dollars they've spent undermining universities in America.
Do you think that Tucker was, or maybe is, trying to take over Turning Point?
I imagine that would be a goal. I don't think he'll be able to do that. I hope he won't be able to do that.
I just say this because Tucker had clearly built inroads into the Heritage Foundation. So you think of the Heritage Foundation as one of the key think tanks. You think of Turning Point as the key youth organization. And so
it might be, by the way.
Looking at it from Tucker's point of view, this is the way
it might even be
if I'm trying to move the Republican Party in a different direction, what better way? Heritage, Turning Point. That would be the way.
And it might be that the Qatar has invested in Turning Point.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the JWhit Podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, please do me a favor and hit me up with that 3-piece special. Like the video, subscribe, and of course, share it with somebody who would also enjoy this type of content. And make sure you leave a comment because I do pin the best comments to the top. So thank you so much for tuning in today. And until next time, everybody, grace and peace.